If you've ever stared at your bank balance and felt your chest tighten over a number that shouldn't have that much power over you, this story is for you. There's a particular kind of fear that has nothing to do with how much you actually have, and everything to do with how much you believe you're missing. It follows you into grocery stores. It follows you into bed at night. And most people spend their entire lives trying to outrun it by earning more, when the running is the very thing keeping it alive. Today I want to tell you about a beggar who sat outside a palace gate for so many years that the guards stopped noticing him, and a king who ruled over more gold than he could count in a lifetime. One evening, the king asked the beggar a question he asked because he was certain he already knew the answer. The beggar's reply was 7 words long. Those 7 words would end up costing the king more than any war he ever fought. But to understand why, you need to understand what brought each of them to that gate in the first place. Before we go on, tell me in the comments, what's the number in your head? The one you think you need to finally feel safe? Don't overthink it, just type it. You might be surprised how many other people in these comments carry the exact same one. In the kingdom of Kelevar, there was a king named Ordovan, and there was a beggar named Amaru. For 11 years, they lived less than 40 paces apart without either one truly seeing the other. Ordovan had inherited his throne young, and with it, a fear he never spoke aloud. The fear that he had not earned any of it. So he spent 30 years trying to earn it after the fact. He expanded the treasury until it needed a second vault, then a third. He taxed the silk routes, then the salt routes, then the river crossings. He collected tribute from 6 neighboring provinces and married his daughters into 2 more. His accountants told him more than once that he was the wealthiest ruler in the history of the region. It never once felt true to him. Every evening he walked past the window of his counting house, saw the stacks of coin catching the last light, and felt the same quiet unease he'd felt as a boy watching his father's crown be placed on someone else's head at a funeral. More was never actually more. It was just further from a floor that didn't exist. Amaru had once been a merchant himself, a modest trader in dyed cloth. Until a flood took his stock, his debts came due at once, and his name became one that other merchants said carefully, like something that might be contagious. He remembered the exact color the river turned that week, a strange rust orange from the clay it dragged down from the hills, and he remembered thinking, even as he watched 3 years of inventory dissolve into it, that he would rebuild within a season. He was wrong by roughly a decade. He lost the shop, then the house. Then, for a long stretch, his own sense of who he was without either. Old associates crossed the street rather than owe him a conversation. A cousin who once borrowed money from him developed a sudden and permanent inability to recognize his face. He ended up at the palace gate not because he expected charity, but because it was simply the widest, flattest stretch of stone in the city, warmed by afternoon sun and sheltered by an overhang from the worst of the rain. And a man with nothing learns to value flat stone the way he once valued property deeds. For the first 2 of those 11 years, Amaru was furious. He rehearsed arguments with the flood, with his former partners, with a version of himself who should have seen the debt coming. He watched merchants he used to outbargain ride past him in litters and felt something curdle every time. This is the part of the story most people skip past too quickly, so I want you to sit in it for a moment, because his fury is not so different from the feeling you get scrolling past someone else's vacation, someone else's house, someone else's easy laugh about money. It is the exact same organ doing the exact same work, but something shifted around the 3rd year, and it didn't happen the way you'd expect. It happened on an ordinary Tuesday, if they had such a word for it, when a woman he didn't know knelt down to give him half a loaf of bread, still warm, and apologized for it not being more. Amaru said something to her that surprised him, even as he said it. He told her it was enough. And in saying it, he realized he meant it, and that this was the first time in 3 years he had meant those words about anything. That single afternoon didn't erase 8 more years at that gate, but it planted something. Remember this detail. It matters later. Word reached Ordovan, as these things do, through a servant who mentioned in passing that the beggar at the east gate had turned down a merchant's offer of steady work sweeping his warehouse. Ordovan found this absurd enough to be memorable. A man with nothing, refusing an opportunity to have something. He filed it away the way kings file away small oddities among their subjects, meaning to be curious about it later and mostly forgetting to be. But what he didn't know was that Amaru hadn't refused the job out of pride or laziness or any of the explanations that made sense to a man who measured a day's worth by its yield. Amaru had refused because the warehouse work would have required him to move across the city, away from the small circle of people who had become, without either side naming it, something like a family. The breadwoman, an old soldier who shared his fire, a boy who ran messages and stopped by to talk simply because Amaru listened. Amaru had done the arithmetic that Ordovan never learned how to do. He had weighed more coin against more connection, and connection had won without a contest. 5 more years passed this way, the king accumulating, the beggar staying exactly where he was, both of them circling something neither had named. The old soldier who shared Amaru's fire noticed the change before Amaru did. He'd known Amaru during the angry years when every conversation eventually curved back toward the flood, the debts, the cousin who forgot his face. Somewhere around the 6th year at the gate, he realized Amaru had stopped bringing it up first. He mentioned this once, bluntly, the way old soldiers mention things. Amaru laughed and said he supposed the story had finally gotten boring, even to him. But that wasn't quite it. The story hadn't gotten boring. It had simply stopped being the only story he was telling himself about his own life. But here's what you need to hold on to. The peace didn't arrive all at once, and it wasn't permanent once it came. There were still cold nights when Amaru watched a merchant's litter pass and felt the old envy flare, sharp as ever. The difference wasn't that the feeling disappeared. The difference was that it no longer had the run of the whole house. It would visit, and then it would leave, and Amaru had learned not to build a home around a guest. Meanwhile, in the palace, Ordovan's wealth kept climbing in ways that would have seemed impossible to the boy who once watched a crown settle on someone else's head. And yet a strange pattern had established itself, one his most trusted advisor pointed out to him only once, carefully, over wine. Every time the treasury grew by a significant measure, the king's mood lifted for perhaps a week, then settled back to exactly where it had been before, as though wealth were a tide that always receded to the same shoreline. The advisor called it nothing in particular. He simply noted it, the way you'd note weather, and never brought it up again after seeing the king's face darken. And this is where everything changed. A war Ordovan had been dreading for a decade finally arrived at his border, and he needed gold faster than his treasury, vast as it was, could move it. He rode out through the east gate at dawn with his generals, and there, as always, sat Amaru. Except this time, the king actually looked at him. Perhaps it was the exhaustion of a man about to gamble his kingdom. Perhaps it was simple curiosity finally catching up with itself after 11 years. He stopped his horse. "You have sat at my gate for over a decade," Ordovan said. "And in that whole time I have never once seen you look afraid. I have more gold than any man in this kingdom's history, and I have not slept without fear in 15 years. Tell me your secret, beggar. What do you have that I don't?" He expected an answer about faith or fate, or the simple-mindedness he privately assumed came with poverty. He was already composing, in his head, the polite way he'd thank the man and ride on. Amaru did not answer right away. He looked at the king for a long moment, not the way a subject looks at a ruler, but the way one tired man looks at another. Then he spoke 7 words, no more. "I already have all I need." That was all. No embellishment, no parable of his own, just 7 words, delivered as plainly as a man stating the weather. Ordovan laughed at first, the short, involuntary laugh of a man who has been handed an answer too simple to be the one he was looking for. But the laugh didn't finish leaving his mouth before something in his chest went very quiet. He sat there on his horse at the gate of his own kingdom, richer than any man for 3 provinces in every direction, and realized he could not say those 7 words about anything. Not his gold, not his crown, not his 6 treaties or his 2 vaults or his daughter's marriages. He had spent 30 years acquiring, and he had never once arrived anywhere he could stand still and call enough. He rode to war that morning, still turning the sentence over. His generals said later that he fought differently after that campaign. Not less fiercely, but with less of the old hunger behind it, as though some engine that had been quietly running his whole life had finally been allowed to switch off. Here is the part of the story that matters most, and I want to say it plainly, the way Amaru said his 7 words. Ordovan was not poor, and Amaru was not, in any way that would satisfy a tax collector, rich. But wealth was never really the thing being measured at that gate. What was being measured was the distance between what a person has and what a person believes they need. For Ordovan, that distance was infinite, because his need was a moving target that fled every time his wealth got close. For Amaru, that distance had closed slowly, over 3 hard years, until one warm loaf of bread was enough to make the gap disappear entirely. That beggar is you, every time you check your account and do math against a number that keeps changing its mind about what would finally be sufficient. That king is you too, the moment a raise or a bonus or a good month stops feeling like enough within about a week of arriving. Most of us are both men living in the same body, on alternating days. The philosophy here has a name, though Amaru never would have used it. It's the idea that suffering doesn't come from what we lack, but from the belief that our peace is conditional on acquiring what we lack. Ordovan suffered inside abundance because his peace had a price tag attached to it, and the price kept rising to match his income. Amaru found peace inside scarcity because at some point, without fully choosing to, he stopped attaching a price to it at all. This isn't a story about money being bad or poverty being holy. Amaru's years of fury prove that poverty carries its own suffering, plenty of it. It's a story about where the floor of enough actually sits, and the uncomfortable truth that, for most of us, it doesn't sit at any number at all. It sits in a decision. So here is something practical, because a beautiful idea without a next step is just a nice feeling that fades by tomorrow. Tonight, before you sleep, write down 3 things money cannot buy that you already have right now, today, exactly as your life stands. Not someday, not once the number changes. Right now. Be specific. Not health, but the fact that you woke up this morning and your body did what you asked of it without being told to. Second, tomorrow morning, before you check any account or any app, ask yourself one question. What is the actual number I believe would make me feel safe? Write it down. Then notice honestly whether the last time you reached a similar number, the feeling of safety actually arrived, or whether the number had already quietly moved. Third, choose one small specific act of generosity this week, not a grand gesture, just one, and give it without calculating what it costs you against what you'll have left. It can be your time, a meal, an hour of real attention to someone who needs it. Amaru's turning point wasn't caused by receiving bread. It was caused by the moment he stopped calculating and simply said the words that were true. Generosity, even in small doses, is often the fastest way to discover you already have more than your fear has been telling you. Picture the beggar at the gate once more, years later, the sun going down orange over the stones he knew better than any room he'd ever owned, a bowl beside him that was, on that particular evening, nearly empty. He wasn't waiting for it to be full. In his own voice, the lesson would have sounded something like this. I stopped measuring my life against what I didn't have the day I noticed everything I did. And if I could say one thing to the version of me still sitting at his old shop, counting losses, it would simply be, you already survived the thing you were most afraid of, so put the fear down now. It isn't earning you anything. And so, the truth this story leaves at your door is this. Enough was never a number. It was always a decision, and it was always available to you, on any day, at any income, the moment you chose to stop waiting for a figure that was never going to arrive and feel finished. If this story gave you even a single moment of quiet tonight, there are more like it waiting for you here, and I'd love for you to stay for the next one. Next time, I'll tell you about a merchant who spent his entire fortune trying to buy back a single afternoon he'd once given away for free, and what he learned about the only currency that never loses its value. Walk gently, live complete.